Your true wealth is your time and your freedom. Money is just a tool to exchange your time. It is a container to store your economic energy until you are ready to deploy it. But the entire world has been cut off from real money and has now been tricked into using currency, a deceptive impostor that is silently stealing your two most valuable assets, your time and your freedom. Today we are entering a period of financial crisis, the greatest the world has ever known. The transfer of wealth that will take place during this decade is the largest transfer of wealth in history. Wealth is never destroyed, it is simply transferred. And that means that on the other side of every crisis, there is an opportunity. The good news is that all you have to do to turn this crisis into your great opportunity is to educate yourself. I believe that the best investment you can make in your life is in your own education. Education about the history of money, financial education, education about money, how the global economy works. If you learn what is happening and how the financial world works, you can put yourself on the right side of this wealth transfer. Winston Churchill once said that the more you look into the past, the more you can see into the future. This video is about creating your own crystal ball. One of the main reasons why we are in the financial mess we have today globally is that people do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency is a medium of exchange, a unit of account. It is portable, durable, divisible, and something called fungible. Fungible means that each unit is equal to the next unit. $1 in my pocket buys the same amount as $1 in your pocket. Money is all of those things, plus a store of value over a long period of time. Even financial planners, bankers, your accountant do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency in a pocket is a medium of exchange. It is a unit of account because it has numbers. It is something durable, it is portable, it is divisible, which means you can make change, and it is fungible. Fungible means that $1 in my pocket buys the same amount as $1 in your pocket. But because governments can print more and more and dilute the currency supply, it means that wealth is transferred from your pocket, from your bank account, to the government and the banking system. This is the main reason why governments and bankers promote fiat money, because it is very easy to manipulate the money supply and steal wealth. They don't like gold and silver being used as money because they can't print it. The reason why gold and silver are the optimal form of money is because of their properties. It is an easy medium of exchange because gold and silver store a large amount of value in a very small area. It is a unit of account. Pure gold has the same value all over the planet. So 1 ounce of gold buys the same amount in Spain as in China or in the United States. Gold and silver are durable. The same gold that the Egyptians used in trade 5,000 years ago is still here with us today. It does not corrode, it is divisible. You can make change with them. It is very portable. You could use something like oil as money, but you can't carry a barrel of oil to buy things. It is fungible. Pure gold is the same anywhere on earth. Pure silver the same wherever, anywhere on earth. It is limited in quantity. That is the reason why it maintains its purchasing power. Governments cannot print it. In the last 5,000 years, only gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. There have been thousands and thousands of fiat currencies. In case you didn't know, fiat currency is paper money. History shows that currencies not backed by gold or silver have been reduced to zero. That is a 100% failure rate. Let me say it again. There is not a single paper currency in history that hasn't gone to zero. Do you think the dollar, the euro, or the peso will be the first? I don't think so. No fiat currency has survived. None. Fiat currency is money that exists by government decree. They have the printing presses and they print it. Then they give it a fiat designation that makes the currency official. In reality, it's just worthless paper. The Central Bank of America is very open about what they're doing. If you read their website, they tell you that your money has no intrinsic value. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. In fact, they display all these facts. But if you tell someone in public that money is created out of nothing, that there is no backing at all, that it has no value, that it's as valuable as monopoly money, they'll look at you as if you're crazy. There is a well-accepted definition of what money is. The question is, when you apply that definition to the things people claim are money, do they fit the definition? Well, just take the paper dollar, for example, which also performs those functions. Does it store value? The dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Therefore, it's not very good as a store of value. One of the things I do to get the public's attention is I have a slide with 3 images on it. One is a pile of monopoly money, another is a stack of Federal Reserve notes, what Americans would call paper currency. the other is solid gold, an American eagle. And the title of this slide is, which of these is not like the others? Well, I've shown this slide to groups of university professors, and I've also shown it to children. When the professors look at it, they say, well, clearly the dollars are not like the others because gold doesn't serve as money and monopoly money is just junk, while the US dollar is a store of value, so it's not like the others. But the children look at it and say, well, the gold coin isn't like the others because the other two are just paper and the gold coin is clearly something different. So, my question is, who is smarter? A university professor or a 5-year-old child? Before the First World War, every note issued by the Treasury would state that $20 in gold coins had been deposited in the United States Treasury, payable to the bearer on demand. The money was in the vault. The currency was a note they gave you, which was a claim check. Just a claim check for the money. It's the same as when you go to the dry cleaner, give them your shirt, and they give you a claim check for your shirt. The value is in that shirt at the dry cleaner, not in the piece of paper that says you own it. So currency was just claim checks for money. The next hidden secret is the difference between currency and money. Money must be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. National currencies are really a tool used by the government and the financial sector to siphon off your time and your freedom by stealing your purchasing power. So instead of storing your economic energy, currencies leak away. Now compare that to the gold and silver used by the Egyptians. You know, people are amazed that after 5,000 years the pyramids are still here. But what's even more astonishing is that the currency those people used in trade to build the pyramids still exists. It may have been melted down and refined, and it might be in a coin or a bar or in some piece of jewelry, but it is still with us today and it still buys something. That's why it is the ultimate form of money. It is divisible, it is permanent, it is a store of value, it is a unit of account. It has everything you want from money, it doesn't disappear, and it can't be increased. That's what makes gold the most beautiful form of money of all. What more could you ask of money? It keeps governments in check, and that's why they don't like gold, because they're getting away with fiat currencies and will do everything possible to discredit it as an asset class. It's the fear that maybe gold will prevail over the system and limit the government's ability to spend beyond its means. You probably know that inflation is an expansion of the money supply and that deflation is a contraction of the money supply. If you expand the money supply, eventually prices will rise. And if you contract the currency supply, eventually prices will fall. This is a pool, but it's not a pool of water. This is a pool of currency, and these are the prices. If you expand the currency supply, prices, like a sponge in water, have to rise to absorb the excess currency. Governments never stop printing more money and increasing circulation. Therefore, prices keep going up. It's not because the things you're trying to buy are changing. Real estate doesn't change. What has changed is the decreasing purchase of foreign currency. It's the currency going down, not housing prices going up. Before we had currency, we used barter. I'll give you 3 coconuts and you'll give me 4 fish because that's a fair trade. But that got complicated, so we had to invent this thing called money to be a portable and divisible medium of exchange. And the challenge is that we lost that a long time ago. We lost having things of value as our currency, and now we have this thing called numbers and accounts. But trust me, it's not real. It's a big made-up story. One of the biggest made-up stories is called quantitative easing, which sounds complex, but it's just a smoke and mirrors term for currency creation. Quantitative easing started with the bank bailouts in 2009. This currency was created out of thin air and then given to the banks, who paid themselves record bonuses as rewards for collapsing the global economy. This is a global phenomenon, but you have to remember now that whether it's quantitative easing, bailouts, or stimulus programs, these are just flashy terms for more currency creation. A lot of people think they'll be fine in their own country, that this is only going to happen in the United States or maybe in Europe. But what they don't realize is that this is a global phenomenon. I have to show you something here. This is the base money in the United States. This is basically the amount of paper dollars that exist. It took 200 years to go from having no dollars in existence to 825 billion. And then we had the bailouts, and then we had quantitative easing, and then we had quantitative easing 2, and then 3, and then 4, and soon we'll have 57 and 382. And it's not just here. This is what the Canadian currency supply looks like. It's the same in Australia, South Africa, Russia. This is how it is in Singapore. The same story. All the governments on the planet are engaging in this crazy deficit spending and expanding their currency supplies, doing financial bailouts, and history shows that there is no example of this ending well. Sometimes it's surprising that we haven't experienced more inflation than we have. If we keep expanding the money supply so broadly, why aren't prices rising faster than they actually are? And the answer is that a good portion of the money created by the Federal Reserve System has been sent abroad. I remember that early in my research I heard the expression that Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, how is that possible? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and ship it. How do you do that? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation simply by sending all those dollars you created to other countries, and then they send you refrigerators, their cars, and their televisions. So you get physical goods and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. Sooner or later, all those dollars will come back home. When the time comes, as it seems to be happening now, when the rest of the world says, no, we don't want to play this game anymore because Uncle Sam's dollars are becoming worthless, we need to find something other than US dollars. Then those dollars start coming back to the United States and people will say, we don't want them anymore. Once the flood of money that the United States had previously exported starts to come back, then the earlier inflation will also return, and we will see the amount of money within the United States grow much more rapidly. During the second round of quantitative easing, global food prices rose by 60%, and this created a humanitarian disaster for the 2 billion people on Earth who live on less than $2 a day. These people were already hungry to begin with. They became even hungrier, and some of them began to overthrow their governments in North Africa and across the Middle East. Quantitative easing was the spark that ignited the Arab Spring. When you create money, you get some kind of inflation. It just depends on where the inflation goes. Inflation mainly affects people in terms of the percentage of their income that goes toward food. And we see this as a relationship, and we know there are certain danger points. For example, in Egypt, once that proportion reached 40% of income going toward food and food prices started to rise because of inflation, the people actually started a revolution. That's exactly what we saw. Similarly, the French Revolution was based on food prices reaching a certain critical point where the risk-reward balance for revolution favored taking action. When there is inflation, it punishes the people who are the most productive in society. In other words, the people who produce more than they consume and save the difference. The problem is that those productive people, the savers, save in their national currency. And unfortunately, the national currency is just a piece of fiat paper at this point. So, when it is destroyed through inflation, those $100,000 you were hoping to retire with no longer exist. And the things you were going to buy with that money and provide to others also no longer exist. Now, what are you going to do? So that seems scary. However, you know this is going to happen and you can only play the hand you're dealt. But the great news is that gold and silver always end up accounting for the expansion of currency supplies. When governments do these kinds of things to their money supply, when they debase it, inflation eventually returns. People feel the loss of their purchasing power. They rush back to gold and silver and bid up the value of gold and silver in the country until it reaches or exceeds the value of all the currency in circulation. This is a process that has been happening repeatedly throughout history, except that this time it's happening on a global scale. It has never happened in all countries at once before. And that means this is the greatest transfer of wealth in history. Therefore, it is the greatest opportunity in history, and it will not happen again in your lifetime. So now we have learned that your true wealth is your time and your freedom. Money is a tool for exchange that stores economic energy, which is your time and your freedom, while currency lets it slip away. Gold and silver are the ultimate forms of money simply because of their properties. Fiat currencies are based solely on trust and always return to their intrinsic value of zero. Governments don't like gold because it imposes restraint. Rising prices are a result of an expanding money supply, and gold and silver always keep pace with an expanding money supply. For now, my challenge to you is to stop calling currency money. It's a crucial first step to free your mind from all this economic confusion and change your perspective.